I felt like they wanted to destroy me. Hey everybody, Tamara here, and I love to keep it very cheerful and upbeat and pleasant here because the world's on fire. Everything seems to be going wrong. So I try for this to be a place where you can find a little bit of, I don't know, happiness and support. I realized as I was talking to some writing buddies of mine that by not sharing my negative experiences, that I'm painting this whole publishing thing to be like this rainbow and butterflies thing where everything's fine all the time and it's perfect. And that's not the case, and that's not how it is for anybody, least of all me. So I bring to you the book that almost broke my writing career. This is brought to you in part by my Patreon. Hi patrons, thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to add your name to this illustrious list, then check out the link down in the description and join my cozy community. All right, wow, this makes me very uncomfortable and super nervous. So if I'm acting a little not myself, that's why. This is very awkward for me. I don't like sharing. Blood Roses and Honeysuckles, that is my debut novel. It's women's fiction. It's set in Appalachia. And there's a link in the description if you want to check it out. I started that book, I'm going to say it was 2007 or 8. That was when the first rendition of it came to be. And the first time I wrote it was it was garbage. I was trying to write a romance, and then I realized I'm not a romance writer, and you could feel it. You could tell that it was very awkward. It was just the love, just what it wasn't working out. But I loved Tiltonsville, which is the town that I created, and I loved Addie, and I loved her best friend Bernie before, like, you know, Bernie Sanders was like a big contender in the presidential election. Her name's Bernadette. It had nothing to do with him. All right, so I decided to take this draft and I chucked it, but I kept those characters, and I kept Tiltonsville, and I kept the idea of the initial conflict that I was thinking about. But instead of focusing so much on a romance, I wanted to focus on their friendship, and I wanted to try my hand at writing unreliable narrators, which that was a very difficult thing. And I also wanted to try to write dual perspective. I might have been a little ambitious. Over the years, I worked on this draft and put it away, came back to it, put it away, came back to it. And finally, I felt like I was at a place where maybe I could publish it. So I started looking for editors. I knew that I needed editing, and I wasn't sure what kind of editors, so I started researching, and I found the term developmental editor. And as I was researching, I realized, oh, okay, so this is a person who'll go through and check out like my pacing. Is the story making sense? Is the character arc complete? You know, is there plot holes, like those big ticket items that if those fall apart, you know, then your story is just not going to take the reader on a pleasurable journey. And I knew that since this was my first novel and it was my first attempt, that maybe I needed help with that kind of thing. So I started looking for editors. I'm not going to tell you who the editor is, okay? And my reasoning is because it looks like their whole business maybe has dwindled. So I don't want to give them any kind of play. And even me giving them bad publicity would still be some publicity, and I don't want that. I had a budget that was small budget. So I knew that I couldn't afford some of like well, you know, when you look up the websites and there's these people that are charging like so much money, and it would end up being, you know, thousands of dollars for me to get an editor for this novel. And I was like, no, I can't. Okay, I can't afford to do all that. One of the groups that I'm in, I was looking through, and there was a few threads about like people needing editors, and there is a fairly large group, so there was people who were talking about you know, their editing companies, you know, their little gigs. So I started looking through, and I was looking for people who would be able to take me on and would I could afford them, essentially. So it was like people who were available, who also weren't going to charge me too much money, who did developmental edits, and who would do a women's fiction. So I was going through, and I asked people, because I knew to do this, I knew to ask people if they could do a sample edit. So sample edit, depending, it could be like 500 words and up to like chapter 1. And essentially, this is a chance for you to evaluate if you like the way that editor does their job. You know, do you like how they address things? Do you like the stuff that how they talk to you, essentially? And also, it gives the editor a chance to look at your writing to see is this something that I want to take on? And with some editors, they'll look at that sample to try to get an idea of how much they want to charge you. Like, do you need more help? Do you need less help? That sort of thing. Out of this small pool of editors, I decided to go with this one person. They seemed really likable. I liked how they talked about my synopsis and the sample. I think it was a 500-word sample. And I just felt like maybe we could connect and we could relate. I made notes. So that was July 30th, 2017, that we did the whole writing sample and thing. I decided to send the draft in 2 parts. And I'm not sure why. Oh, yes, I do remember why.
Hello, editing Tamara here. I look a mess, so you get to listen to Robot Chicken. Blood Roses and Honeysuckles is written in dual perspective. The first half is Addie's voice. The second is Bernie's. I don't feel like I made that clear. Okay then.
I was doing the dual perspective, and I wanted to see if I had Addie's perspective down first before I sent in Bernie's, and because part 2 was so reliant on part 1, and I wanted to make sure that if there was things about Addie's perspective that needed to be changed, that I would change it within Bernie's as well before I sent it off the second half. So there was a whole method to my madness. I sent that September 14th, 2017. There was a huge weather event. I feel like it was a hurricane, not here, but where they live. And it was like this big thing, and it ended up pushing back all of their work. And I was like, fine, I totally understand. That's cool. Keep in mind that we did have a contract, and we did have a, due date or whatever, but I wanted to be flexible because, big weather events are not anyone's fault, and that's huge and scary. And the person said that they were having like all these issues with their home, and they just had a lot, and they just had to push me back. And I was like, that's fine. And so I waited. I waited very patiently, and I waited. Around the beginning of October, I sent a message just to see, how are you doing? Are you okay? And when would you be able to work with me? And the person said that they still needed more time. I was like, okay, fine, take your time. And then a couple more weeks went by, and I'm like, man, it's been a month. And I understand that he's going through it, but where are they? So I decided to be inch eye, private eye, and go through their Facebook, and I'm looking at these posts, and I'm like, so you seem to be doing quite well. All of these posts are super positive. You sound very happy. And they talked about editing someone else's work. And I was like, hold up. And even then, I still waited, I think, 2 more weeks before I sent my final email, which was very irritated in tone. It was still professional, but I was letting them know that I was dissatisfied, and if you're not going to edit it, then let me know and return my deposit, and let's just cut this. So I paid half in advance as a deposit. So November 8th was the day that I received my first edit for a novel, and I was nervous, but I was really excited until I started reading the editor letter. So the editor letter essentially gives you kind of a breakdown. Some people go by chapter of what they found, the positives, the negatives, and gives you like an overall feel of how they felt about it and what you need to work on. And let me just tell you, I felt like they wanted to destroy me. I have been edited before. I've been edited a ton of times, whether it was with poetry, articles, blog posts submitted to other places, etc., etc. I'd never read anything that was so inherently negative and harsh and cruel. And even now, looking back on it, because again, this was 2017, looking back on it today in 2020, and I'm reading it, I'm still like, wow, yeah, this was harsh. It was super harsh. And the thing is that yes, the editor needs to be absolutely honest, truthful, to the point, but also they shouldn't be writing with a poison pen as though they're trying to stab your heart out. I read this and I thought that I was a failure. I read it and I felt like every single fear, every single negative self-talk that I ever had about myself was embodied in this letter. And I felt so bad. And I thought, am I even a writer? Could I possibly be a writer for someone to hate my writing so much? His last line was, I know this reads harshly, but I'm just being honest. It was more that I had to read this, not that I wanted to. Oh, and I died. Well, at least I went into an absolute depressive moment. I didn't tell anyone what was going on. I was just horribly depressed. I felt so bad. I felt bad about myself, about my story, about my chances of being an author and living this dream that I've had my entire life. And one person was there to destroy it. It took me 2 or 3 weeks before I finally spoke to anyone about it. And I told my fiance, poor guy, he hears so much of this author life. I'm sure that it's too much for his math guy brain, but he listened to me. And I remember how shocked he was. And he was like, I knew something was wrong, but you wouldn't talk about it, so I was just waiting for you to say something. And he had internalized it and he thought it was him, and I'm like, no, it had nothing to do with you. You're amazing. It's this, that, and the other. And he was like, I don't think that that's the way they're supposed to talk to you. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I think that they're supposed to help you write better, and they're not supposed to make you feel bad. And I think that he was deliberately so harsh because he was mad. And I was like, hadn't thought about that. So then I talked to my friends in LSG. Hey guys. And oh my gosh, they literally pulled me off the cliff, and they're like, no, we've all had editor letters before, and it was not like this. And I was like, for real? Oh, so this guy was an asshole. Okay. But I did take some of his advice because I did feel like some of it was valid. What wasn't valid was the way he spoke to me. And some of the judgment calls he made. Like, for instance, and this is something like, if you are new to doing this, learn from my mistakes. When I was sending him the manuscript, I really didn't think about the formatting of it. I thought that it didn't matter. But in his mind, because I hadn't formatted it, and like, I think there was like, chapter 25 had been copied twice or something like that. Yeah, it was like a chapter number had been copied twice. So he thought because of the formatting hadn't been set and that the chapter thing was copied, or not 25, what was it? That's immaterial. Anyway, so he thought because of those two things that it showed that I had really rushed my work, which was absurd. I hadn't really rushed my work. I just didn't think that was something that was important, because I didn't think of that. I just didn't dawn on me. So now I try to make the copy, as nice looking as possible, because my next editor also was like, what is this? They told me that when the formatting was kind of screwy, that it was distracting. And I was like, oh, yes, that makes sense. Duh. Do some light formatting, just try to make it all look the same. I generally have it in either like Times or Arial, something that's not super fancy, and I'll have it at like 12-point font, 1.5 spacing, and I have it justified. Make sure that I have my chapter breaks and things like that, so everything looks uniform. It looks kind of clean, even if it's not perfect. Obviously, it's not perfect. I'm sending it out to edits, and also I'm a human. I ended up going through 2 other editors with this, I think. Or no. I had one other editor who was lovely, but I don't think that we connected. She was basically helping me because I'd had such a bad editor experience, so she like came in to just help me out. But it wasn't really her genre, and the whole Appalachia kind of mindset was very foreign for her. So it didn't really work out, which that's fine. Sometimes they don't. But I had wonderful people who beta read for me, and they were able to help me out, and I really appreciate you guys. That was amazing. And finally, I published October 14th, 2018. But the thing is that I had gone through so much with that book that even though I was very happy for it to launch, it was still bittersweet. And even now, I don't really talk about that book a lot. I know that the way he spoke to me and the way he communicated his critiques was heavily biased, and it was written to hurt. But even so, I still doubt it. But I did end up doing a complete rewrite, which, and that's fine. And I think that my story did end up better, but I think it could have ended up better without all the trauma, the BS, and the unnecessary dramatics and the depression. It could have just been a better book on better terms. What I want for you to learn from this is, one, yes, look for editors who edit in your genre. So make sure before you start looking for an editor that you know what your genre is. 2, do the editing sample. So that would be 500 words. Like I said, usually from 500 up to like a chapter. Send that to them and see how what they write resonates with you. 3, and this is the part that I missed. Try to get some references. If that person is referred to you, that's beautiful. If someone refers them, is like, this editor is fantastic, and it's like, oh yes, okay, I can trust you, person. Or ask them for references from other clients, you know, like, and of course you could always take a chance on someone who is fairly new. And that's why that writing sample, that editing sample would be so important. And, you know, do some basic formatting for your story. Try to send it in as best as you can get it. Even though you know that you're going to need help with it, you know, try to make it look as best as you can. Also, know what kind of edits you need. And let me know down in the comments if you'd like me to do a video on different types of editors. That story, that book almost broke me. But what I learned from that is the importance of having writing friends and a writing community. Because without them, even though, you know, my math guy was giving me the support, I was still like, well, but you don't really know. You're not in this world, you know. Maybe you're just saying that because you like me. But having those friends who'd gone through the editing process before, or who were editors, and having them tell me, hey, this is not normal. This guy is a piece of trash. Throw him away. No, this is not right. Having people say that to me made me feel so much better. I felt less like a failure. Because yes, you're going to make mistakes. That doesn't make you a bad person, and it doesn't make you a bad writer. And you shouldn't be made to feel like you are the worst thing ever just because you've made mistakes. And I think that's that on that. Like I said, let me know if you want me to talk more about types of editors. I hope that this was helpful. Let me know if it was. Click a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Another video that's going to be coming up soon that was suggested by my patrons was a video about what cozy mysteries are. So if you are interested in hearing about that, you should subscribe and click that notification bell. I know it only works when it wants to, but I mean, that's better than nothing, right? I don't know. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one, or next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern here for my write-in. Bye.